chats before, and this is the third fireside chat. This is the last for January for those who want to become something. The first fireside chat was how to become a data analyst. The second was how to become an AI
before.
or ML engineer.
This is the third fireside chat. This is
Okay,
the last
I'm getting
for January for those who want to become something. The first fireside chat was
okay.
how to become a data analyst.
Okay, I think I was having a sound. Yes, I've stopped that sound. Sorry about that. So
No worries.
yeah, it happens in life, right? So this fireside chat is about starting your journey in the cloud, and I'm surrounded by heroes, superheroes, experts. Not to waste a lot of time, I'll just go around following what I see on my screen here. So, Rob, you go first. Brief introduction of who you are, what you do, just brief, because we have lots of interesting questions from the community for you. Rob, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Koch. I work for Slalom as a data engineer, and I help clients move to the cloud. And I am based here in Seattle, Washington. I started with the cloud, oh gosh, 2008, 2007, maybe 2009, somewhere around there. Left the space, kind of came back. And so, yeah, I'll pass it on to whoever's next. Oh, and I guess I should say first before I pass it, I'm deaf and I have a sign language interpreter who's voicing for me. So you hear a different voice, but this is me, Rob. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I see Mike. You have the floor.
Mike Fiedler here out of New York City. I've been working in this space for close to 30 years now, pre-cloud. And when cloud came around and became a little more popular in 2011, 2012, and there were some offerings, I started exploring and using them and have been kind of deploying critical infrastructure on clouds ever since.
Thanks. On my list, I see Andrew. You ready to go?
Hey everyone, it's Andrew Brown. Thank you for having me. For those who don't know, I live in the north of Canada, where it's really, really cold. I'm known for creating a lot of free certification cloud courses, running free boot camps, and just being a troublemaker on the socials. But yeah, I'm glad to be here and provide any kind of help that I can do. Oh yeah, also I worked in ed tech for the last 15 years, so I specialize in tech education and building tech educational platforms. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Ishola is saying, Andrew and Chris, I'm currently watching your bootcamp. And also for you, Rob, Alfonso Torres is saying, hello, Rob. Over to you, Brian. You are next.
Hi, Brian Tarbucks, Hero Ambassador, User Group Leader, New Voices Mentor, Alexa Champion. I started coding in Fortran on punch cards back in the day. I've been doing Amazon for about 14 years or so. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect at Calent. We help people do stuff in the cloud. And yay, next.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for coming. Chris, you are good to go.
Hey, everybody. My name is Chris Williams. I am the Developer Relations Manager for HashiCorp for North America. In a previous life, I was an enterprise cloud consultant helping Fortune 500s move up to, around, and back down from the cloud. And yeah, I'm helping Andrew Brown with his generative AI bootcamp in a couple of weeks. And doing some traveling to, spread the word about how to get infrastructure as code to help you move to the cloud faster.
Cool. I think we will have a few minutes. We are going to talk briefly about the bootcamp. Is interesting because I also I have something to do with the bootcamp. So let's go straight. I'll start with you, Rob. What inspired you to start a career in cloud computing, and what was your first step?
So that was way, way back. I'm trying to think when I became an AWS data hero in 2019. Let's see. So there was a lot of doubt I want to say, around that time with security and all of our information in the cloud. And there was just a lot of doubt in that area. But at the same time, many startups had the infrastructure and they had the immediate infrastructure need. And so they didn't want to just set up all of their colos or co-locations, the costs and everything associated with that. So they were utilizing the cloud. And so I first started, kind of fell into it working for a desktop gaming company. And the concept was that you'd play like Dungeons and Dragons or something along those lines where you'd throw dice and it would roll on the virtual platform for that. So people were, playing remote all over the place and kind of a mix of Flash and Silverlight. Imagine that way back in the day, right? And so we were building things like scalable systems to use EC2 and containers. And really, I guess it was just EC2 instances at that time. It was building what was ECS back in the day with C#. So you'd spin up a service, and people would play the game. Once that's done, you'd spin it down. So all of that, from that point on, the cloud was giving people the potential to and opportunity to scale your systems, and I was hooked. Really, I see where the cloud comes in at that point in time. And often that was kind of, I guess, how people fell into cloud, definitely how I did. And still, I see the potential. It still exists today. There's a lot of room for people migrating to the cloud and being able to leverage that opportunity.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Amelia. Mike, can you tell me what inspired you to start a career in the cloud?
I mean, inspire is a big word, right? Like back in 2011, when I joined the team at Datadog, we were kind of building out a new idea. We were trying to understand what other companies were kind of contending with on their monitoring platforms. And EC2 was pretty new, and we leveraged that to our advantage. We said, you know what? We don't know kind of how much compute we're going to need. We don't know what our customer growth patterns are, and investing in capital expenses to buy data center hardware just didn't make sense when we were such a young company. And, our customer base was going to grow with us. So leveraging cloud and kind of learning the different scaling patterns and deployment methodologies was critical. So I guess that was like necessity pushed me to that as opposed to kind of inspiration to join it. But that purely came out of, we need to build something that will grow on demand, and AWS had the best cloud offering, or pretty much the only cloud offering that we could leverage at that speed. So we leaned pretty heavily into that and, learned a lot of the quirks and kind of hurt ourselves with a bunch of the early rough edges, and worked alongside the AWS team to kind of help them understand where we were experiencing those rough edges so they could figure out good ways to smooth them out. You're muted.
Okay, let me unmute. Yeah, sorry. So, Andrew, there are so many careers in the cloud. Someone said they wanted to get into the cloud. There's so many options. So what are common entry level roles in cloud computing, and how can someone position themselves to learn one, at least maybe move to another one later, but how can one get started with so many entry roles?
I think that learning the fundamentals across the board will prepare you for any entry-level role, because if you learn a little bit of everything, then you have a better chance of choosing kind of your path. But when we're talking about specific like roles in companies, it really depends on what roadmap you want to take. So I know that if you want to go to DevOps, a lot of folks will try to work the tech help desk at larger organizations, because when you think of DevOps, that's working with people servers, and companies do not trust outsiders that do not have previous experience with trusted companies. So you have to build trust within a company, and then if they're really nice, they'll let you play with their servers under supervision. If we're talking about like a cloud engineer, I think web development is still a good a way of getting there. So if it's front end, full stack, or back end coding, you can then flip that into let's say a cloud engineer role. But it's the traditional roles are your stepping stone to these more specialized cloud roles, or a lot of these traditional roles just have cloud in them, right? So that I would just say the roles that we used to have are still the same way in.
Okay, so you're like taking what you used to do offline and now bringing it online to some extent. Okay, so Brian, I have this. Okay, no, Chris, I have this question for you. So, which cloud platform, would you recommend for beginners and why? Not multi-cloud. Which cloud platform?
Wait,
Yeah.
you're asking a bunch of AWS heroes which cloud platform we would recommend?
Yes, for beginners.
I think everybody should go with GCP, honestly. No, wait, that's the wrong answer. I can't say that. I just okay. I will say that it does depend kind of on what you want. So if you're trying to get into the cloud today, to Andrew's point, you definitely want to pick a thing that you want to start with, whether that be networking or security or software development, or pick your entry point. And then once you've gotten that entry point, branch out from there. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to like do all of the things at the same time. Don't be a software developer and a security person and a network person. Pick a thing. Depending upon the thing that you want to pick, like if you want to get really, really good at Windows operating system, maybe Azure is the thing that you want to take a crack at. If your entry point is Kubernetes and containers, then maybe GCP would be the thing that you'd want to take a tackle at. If the company that you work for has a cloud that you want, that that they're 90% invested in one cloud versus another cloud, that's the thing that you would want to pick. I obviously personally picked AWS because that was that was the easiest entry point for me. I came from a virtualization background and a networking background. So for my brain type, working with that cloud was the thing. But that is a very personal question that every student needs to answer for themselves. Like there's no right answer. Much like there's no right answer of which programming language should I start with. Python. There is no right cloud to pick. That being said, a lot of the businesses out there have a preponderance of their workloads in AWS. So that's kind of, where, but again, it's a very customized thing. So take all of that information into consideration when you, as a student, as a beginner student, are picking your cloud.
Thanks. Yeah, that's interesting knowing that it sometimes just depends on the company where you want to work, and sometimes you learn on the field. Thanks, Chris, for your intervention. Of course, we are AWS heroes, but we always advise on the best solutions for our customers. Okay, Brian, I'm now with you. So I want to talk about certifications. There's this certifications. Should we do certifications? Maybe some years back, everyone wanted to get a certification. What's your take on that? Are certifications necessary to get into the cloud?
Okay, before I answer that, I do want to say, it's sort of a funny thing. I was an engineer for a long time, a development engineer, and then I was at a company where one day the entire DevOps team quit, and they had a company meeting where they said, "Does anyone know how any of this stuff runs?" And I raised my hand and I said yes, and so then I became a DevOps engineer. So sometimes it's just raising your hands and saying yes. Certifications are interesting. I work for an AWS partner organization, and we get sort of graded on how many certifications we have. A certification alone obviously won't get you a job. I will say the solutions architect associate is actually a really good generalized a class because it gives you experience, it gives you exposure to a lot of different things. The pro certs are very, very hard, and the specialized ones, I don't know, your mileage may vary, and Amazon keeps changing them all, and everything's becoming AI. So I don't know. I mean, I personally am staying away from the new AI certifications because it's too much, you know, it's too shiny right now. I think studying for the solutions architect associate is actually a great way, using a course like Andrew's or bootcamp or something like that, is a great way to get a wide experience. Because one of the things is, as much as every job in this field is, if you're going to be in this field, you've committed to continuous education, and you've committed to your world in 2 months looks nothing like your world does now. But in the current world with cloud and with AI, it's even worse. So stay flexible, keep learning, but certs are fine. But as I ran into someone back in like 2015 who had gotten all 6 at that time certs. And she was 4 months out of school and had all the certs and knew nothing. So.
Okay, thanks. Rob, what's your take on certification, no certification, self-study? What do you think about this certification topic?
Yeah, there's some different opinions on that. Like Brian said, not every certification will lead you to work. But of course, certifications help you potentially understand the marketing and the shtick coming from AWS or coming from Azure or coming from Google Cloud and GCP, right? Why they're promoting people to the cloud and encouraging that, wanting people to migrate. You see things like that, which is fine. And then also, I would say it helps you understand the concept of the cloud, really helps you understand the architecture behind it. And when you take a certification, you notice these things. You say, oh, okay, I notice why this is best practice or this is the best approach. Some of the things that I've learned from the exam questions themselves, I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, right? So sometimes, they can be some challenging questions and some trick questions. They're out to get you, basically. But, joking aside, the certifications itself, I think, have value. Like Brian was saying, he worked for an AWS partner. I also do. And so certifications within the business are more, for the best partner status award and things like that, where they track how many we have. We've been partner of the year with AWS for many years ongoing. And a lot of people here are experts in the various areas of AWS and have certifications. But then again, certifications, if you're studying for them, you will learn a lot. I will say that if you're studying, there's no reason not to expose yourself in the real world, compared to those certifications that will give you maybe a different perspective or different approaches on solving the tech issues that you may face. So that's kind of my take on it.
Okay, thanks so much, Rob, for that. So like Brian said, he raised his hand and that's how his career took a turn. Now, I want to ask you, Mike, I'm from school. I just left high school. I want to get started with the cloud. So can you tell me how I can go about it? Maybe mentioning things like books, courses, projects, things like that. How do I leave school and start doing work in the cloud?
So I appreciate the question, but I have to admit, it's been a long time since I left school. So my advice might, be tinted with that different age of what youth are going through today. So, that said, I think some of the most valuable pieces that a hiring manager look for are the ability to learn, to acquire knowledge, to apply that knowledge, and to ask for help when you know you need to ask for help, but also to find your own help. So I think that when you're kind of starting out, finding people to follow, finding people to learn from, which in today's day is even easier. There's just so much of it. So you kind of have to pick your own mentor off the internet, as it will, whether that be buy a book and read it, or take an online course, or just, watch videos and read blogs. But there's an enormous amount of content out there for you to self-educate. There's also programs that will help educate you with like a mentored program. And then as you mentioned, there's certifications. For someone entering the job market, what hiring managers will often look for is, what have you done? Like, what have you done already? What have you done on your own? Have you taken some courses? Do you have a certification? These are somewhat proxies for experience. They're not a replacement, because real experience is far more valuable than academic accomplishment, but an academic accomplishment is very valuable in lack of experience. So you kind of have to push on both fronts to kind of look for open source options out there and maybe contribute to existing projects. Look to see, are there things that you could do on your own that are new and novel that could show off your abilities a little bit, as well as being very upfront about when you don't know something, how you went about and learned it. There's nothing more powerful than saying, I don't know yet, and then going out and finding an answer, because everything we do has some sort of answer. There is some sort of answer. It's how hard are you going to work at it to try and find the answer, or get help to find the answer. But there's always an answer. And that, I think, is a very important, like, powerful thing to kind of remember, is everything is knowable. It's how hard are we going to work at it? Is it worth it? Or is it just, a point to say, it's not worth pursuing that right now, but I could if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So, Andrew, I have the same question I want to ask, same thing to you. So I just left school. I want to get into the cloud. How do I go about it? I'm thinking in terms of books, courses, projects. I know you have lots of interesting courses. You've done a lot for the community. I also want you to give a general advice for somebody leaving school who has not been working, like switching roles, but it's the first time, getting to the cloud.
For some young folks, they have a more opportunity to take risks and to invest more time in building creative projects that are aligned to their personal interests. I know when I got out of high school, I did have to get a job. So what I did was I moved in with my grandma so that I could reduce the amount of responsibility I had to pay for myself so that I could focus on my education. And I did that for 3 years. And I literally spent all that time just trying to get clients online or to build things that could make money myself. So I literally was an entrepreneur trying to build projects until I met to a level that I could try to get hired. And so for me, I had a very hard time in my journey getting hired just because I'm dyslexic. So my communication skills kind of falter in the interview process. And so I had to demonstrate that I could do the skills. And it wasn't until I was able to fully build an application with a payment gateway and I had 10,000 people on a platform that all of a sudden there was like this big switch, and then people like really wanted to hire me. But before that, people always lacked confidence to hire me because I could not communicate my skills. But once I was able to demonstrate success, then that was my way in. And I hope it's not like that for everybody, but if you are facing challenges, whether it's geographical or cultural or things like that, that you find a way to work through those things. But again, if you're young and you can take advantage of family to invest that time to build for 2-3 years, try to do that. Yeah, and if you don't have a learning path, then of course, fundamental certifications is a good start. As other people have mentioned here, certifications are a goalpost, and they're there to keep you motivated, but they might not 100% align with real world skills. And the only way you get real world skills is by trying to do it for real. So, sorry.
Yeah, thanks so much, Drew, for that answer. I hear a lot of like real world experience building projects. Brian, what do you think? Do you think we need to build, real life projects? Are they necessary? Are they important if someone wants to get into the cloud?
Yeah, a real world project sort of answers the question of can you do this? It is sort of the chicken and egg of how do you get real world experience when mostly you need real world experience. One option that is GitHub projects. There are all kinds of open source projects that are looking for help, find an open, go on GitHub, find a project that's looking that has feature requests and add something there. There's also all kinds of there's so many choices. Reach out to heroes. I mean, some of it is you need help, and a lot of it is luck. Finding a connection. V brown bag, which is remarkably hard to say, is an option. User groups are also a great opportunity. Go to a user group, and I run one in Boston. I think a bunch of us here run users group actually. Those are places where you can connect with people. I mean, I will say at one of my recent user groups, there was a woman who had recently graduated from college. She came up to me, asked me some questions. We connected. Actually, she got an All Builders grant to go to reInvent. We chatted there, and now she's coming along. So a lot of it is just, fortune and luck, and say yes a lot. But there are people who are looking for help, and if you can help them, I mean, it's funny, having a pull request on your resume helps. The other thing that I say, and I think a lot of user group leaders will do this, is in Boston, we've allowed people to do 5-minute talks where they say, hey, I'm brand new to the cloud. I know nothing. This is what I think, can you help me? And then we have said, look, if you do that, you can put on your LinkedIn or your resume, if people still use resumes, I gave a talk at a user group, and that sets you apart. So there's luck and there's creativity, and say yes a lot.
Oh, thanks for that. Now, there is this question. People reach out and say, we want to get to the cloud, but I don't want to code. I'm afraid of coding. Chris, what would be your response to somebody like this, or people who are thinking, who are afraid of coding? What do you think about them joining the cloud?
I love that you picked me for this question, because Mike's going to sit here and go, yeah, Chris, what do you think? Full disclosure, Mike and I have open source contribution Fridays where we sit down, and he, as the PyPI security engineer, walk me through some of the problems. He basically, we're code pairing, and he's tutoring me, and so he's an amazing human for doing that. One of the things that my recommendations for anybody that's trying to pick up a language, whether that be Spanish or English or Python, is you have to do a little bit every day. You have to expose yourself over time. It's not something that you can do for 8 hours on a Saturday and then expect it to stick, because you're going to burn out, and you have to expose yourself to a little bit over time. You have to do in the real world. You would, if you wanted to learn Japanese, like me and Andrew are currently, you would go to Japan and you would immerse yourself in it. If you want to learn a programming language, you have to, go to the GitHub repos that use that language and immerse yourself in it. You have to read the books. You have to figure the things out in the way that your own brain works. It is not the classic excuse is, I'm not good at math, so I don't know how to program. Every single last one of us is terrible at math. You do not need to be a good mathematician to know how to program in a computer language. You just have to start doing it. Pick a project, pick something that you want to either contribute to, or if like myself, you like video games, start building tiny little Python video games. That's how you get into it. And then you can, once again, like my previous analogy of learning one service and then branching out in tech, learning a language is picking a thing that you want to do and then branching out within that. Then start, learn how to play video games, and then, connect to a back end, or create like a front end for it. There's so many different paths you can take in learning a computer language, that you want to pick the things that excite you, not the thing that's going to be like, oh, I have to study again. It's like, oh, I get to work on my little project again, yay! And that's gonna make you stick with it.
Rob, what do you think? I'm afraid of coding, but I want to get to the cloud. What can you advise? Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Back when I graduated with an economics degree, and I never had formal computer science education by any means. And if we want to talk, deep computer science and things like that, all the specifics and kind of what the switches are and what the assembly language looks like, that's way over my head, right? Uh, but I have no idea as far as that stuff is concerned. But get a book, go to the store, get a book, and really follow along and do the tutorials. Get a little bit more comfortable. Coding is more like uh, really getting comfortable with the nuances of computers and computing. It's how to interact with it. Once you get more comfortable with one computer, then that can transfer to a lot of different things and you can take off from there. Really, I love the ability to tell the computer what to do. That's really fascinating to me. I fell into that. And then the data space, obviously, there's a lot of programming and data storage and things like that. I kind of fell into that area. I wanted really to optimize why the computer was so slow. And we were kind of going back and forth with responses and trying to diagnose what the issue was, really kind of a deep dive at that point to get into it. And then, the technical architecture and how the databases work and just kind of learning about that and started picking up little things and then picking it apart and getting more comfortable with it. And then you can even jump to something like EKS or Kubernetes into that world, and so that I kind of did a little bit of that where I got to the point where I could see the error messages and say, I know exactly what the problem is, going into Python or C# or .NET programming, whatever it may be. And I could say, okay, here's the problem with CPU memory, balancing, things like that, right? So starting to get more of that innate knowledge of the tech stack you're working with. And so just falling into that, honestly, I would say majority of that time, I did not spend coding. Majority of that time I was reading, I was looking at the Stack Overflows, I was looking at blogs, looking at various things. So you learn a lot from that than necessarily actually coding itself, right? So coding is still valuable. I will say that in terms of getting something to work the way you want it to. So that's kind of my take on that.
Thanks, Rob. It's interesting to hear you came from an economics background. I also, if correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, you come from a linguistic philosophy background. So I'm sure you can answer this. How would somebody who comes from a background with no coding get to the cloud? And maybe it's linked to a question somebody asked also from YouTube here. How can a non-technical person get to the cloud? So I can consider you like a non-technical person, which is the same question like non-coding person. Yeah, how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I put in the chat, coding is just communicating. Yeah, I mean, in university, I was a TA for intro computer, and the other three there were 4 sections, and the other 3 were all technical TAs, and I was the philosophy major, and everyone's like, oh, his section is going to suck. And my section did metaphors, man, and that's communication, and we rocked. So it's about I'll agree. I mean, I'm math phobic. I'm also dyslexic. I'm probably ADHD as well. I mean, I have all the things. It's just you don't need that. What you need to be able to do, as with any communication, is have an idea and work on how to express it. And tagging off something that Chris said about games, I've got no background in games, but I took a couple classes for universe programming, which is VR programming, and it was in C#. I didn't know C#, but it's like, okay, well, it's a language. And after you've had a bunch of languages, it's like, okay, C#, it's got if statements and it's got loops. And I don't care if you've got semicolons or indents or braces, but I will fight Chris on where the braces go, because I know where the braces go. Although I don't code, although I code mostly in Google Docs anymore, so I don't even have braces. But at the end of 2 VR classes, I made a copy of Fruit Ninja in VR, and it took me about 3 hours. And I don't know C#, I don't know universe. and I don't know gaming, but it was fun. And I guess that goes back to something Chris said. It was fun. So pick something that's fun. It doesn't have to be mathy. I mean, how many software problems, are mathy? It's, DoorDash dash. It's like, yeah, I want a burger from someplace. Find me somebody who's close by and who's willing to do it for me. Or, there's a million projects out there. Most of them aren't about math. And especially as we get into Gen AI, it's all about language. It's all about English. So, the hot new field, prompt engineering, and by the time this video was shown, maybe prompt engineering will have already become passé. But it's all about communication. So it comes down to communication, I think.
Yeah, thanks so much. We see coding is about communication, and you just need to put your head into it, and you're going to figure it out. So there's lots of interesting advice from you, how to start, how to navigate, how to transition. I want to know, Mike, are there common errors beginners make? I mean, let's look at the errors. We avoid this now. Let's look at the other side. So what are common errors you think beginners maybe spend their energy on, their time or whatever? What are common errors beginners make when they want to get into the cloud?
Yeah, Mike, how do I
Yeah.
screw up all the time?
Oh,
Wait, what?
okay.
Oh.
So just don't do what Chris does, right? Like that's the truth. Just follow Chris around and say, what did Chris do? Do the opposite. That's not true at all. That's very much a joke. But I think very, very common errors are this notion of I need to understand everything before I make my first step. And I think the most powerful thing that I have been able to share with others is when I'm coding, I make hundreds of mistakes until I get it right. And that happens all the time. And I think that goes underrepresented by senior engineers to tell the juniors, like, we're all just figuring it out. We just figured out a few more things faster or earlier and have had time to bake those longer. So there's no compression algorithm for experience. You have to take a step. And there's a term for, spending too much time on trying to figure out what that step is. That term is analysis paralysis. And this happens in all manners, right? It's which cloud should I pick? Pick one, try it. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, try another one. But if you spend all of your time just analyzing which one should I learn, well, then you'll never make that first step and you won't have learned anything. So I think one of the biggest issues is not making a first step. And then I think the next step after that is after you've made that step is, all right, I've hit a problem. I've hit a wall. I don't know how to resolve. And this happens very often in like a junior at a new team or a more collaborative professional environment, not being able to raise your hand and say, I need help. I need help. I'm stuck. I don't know the next thing. And then, sourcing your answers from your teammates, from your mentors, from your managers, or from the community, because what I have seen is folks try to solve the problem themselves and get stuck and stay stuck for a week. And then their manager says, how come you didn't ask for help? Right? Like, why did you just remain stuck? That's not good on your performance because yeah, there's time to like try and figure things out, but there's also a time to tell your kind of team, hey, I'm really stuck here. And then I think those are two of the biggest kind of missteps that folks starting out I've seen just are kind of not ready to make that step. If you're fearful of coding, and just try it, like try a language, pick up something and try it. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, try something else. There's so many things that you could do. And like Andrew said earlier, find something that dovetails with your interests. If you're interested in remote control cars, there's code for that. There's software, there's interaction. If you like, weather patterns, a friend of mine built this weird weather pattern monitoring thing using open source data and APIs. Like, it's all available for you to explore and take. Obviously, there's many commercial offerings that cost money, but there's so much free out there for you to just try things out and see what resonates with you, what maps to your understanding. And very often somebody is more than happy to pay you to do the thing that you have acquired knowledge in.
Thanks so much, Mike. Chris, yes. So drawbacks, same question. Can you chip in?
So I just saw a comment in the thread that says most instructors saying that you should learn your full CCNA before you start and then go into Windows servers. While that is a path, sure, that is a very prescribed and specific path. And without knowing the person's background, I mean, that could be an awful idea. That could be a great idea. I mean, that's actually ironically the exact same path that I took, but that's not for everybody. And that's a very niche recommendation. I would to piggyback on what everybody else has said, if somebody comes at you with a very opinionated piece, they're probably just speaking from their experience and giving you what worked for them. Mike is absolutely correct in that you should pick something and don't get bogged up in the Python versus JavaScript as my first language wrestling, or which IDE should I use? Is it PyCharm or VS Code? That's all nonsense. Pick one thing, stick with it. Don't listen to the naysayers, and just kind of get grinding. Sit down and start doing your thing. All of the advice so far has been absolutely fantastic. So there's not much more that I could say than just like get going, get on, move it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So, Andrew, I would like to ask the same
Yeah.
question to you. So, Andrew, what do you think mistakes beginners make when they want to start? Mistakes to avoid. Yeah.
Being consistent is one thing. The more consistent you are, the better your result will be. I think taking on too much early on, people want to move really fast, and so sometimes they take on so much that it stresses them out, and they think it's beyond their ability to do it. So you have to kind of self-regulate and scope the work based on what your needs are. There's this huge fear of not being good at something. And if you are uncomfortable and you are failing, then you are learning, right? And even if people give you a weird look, being like, "Oh, you're really not ready yet," you just have to kind of take that as your bumps and keep moving forward. And this is kind of from experience from trying to learn the Japanese language, because I'm kind of experiencing, not from a tech perspective, but at least from a learning perspective, doing something that you're very uncomfortable with. And I don't think it has to do with tech. It just has to do with learning in general. But those are the conceptual things I would say.
Okay, that's interesting. So, I want to ask you, Rob. We've spoken a lot about technical skills. Do you have some soft skills that people need to have, like to be successful in? I know cloud has many careers, but what are some soft skills that you advise people to have when they want to get into careers in the cloud?
Yeah, so as a deaf person, soft skills come in handy, very much so, because a lot of communication, I face a lot of barriers with interacting with people. I'm lucky to be able to, lip read a little bit and be able to speak a little bit, but I'm not perfect at that. And so, there's a lot of challenges in regards to that with communication. I have had to overcome a lot of things with my soft skills in that regard. You can have, chats and emails and, good personality and interact with folks and be a little bit more accepting of things. I would say kind of along the same lines as Andrew, just don't take it personally. Really just kind of accept that and move on. And even us as heroes, interacting, some of us have really heavy accents. And some of those are, hard or almost impossible for me to lip read. So I really have to negotiate that communication. But yeah, when we all get together, who is good, with gesturing or, colloquial and how they kind of use their facial expressions and things like that, right? And so that works with me as well as it works with them, right? And so if somebody is a little bit, more straight faced or they're harder to lip read, I don't connect well with those people just because of that communication barrier, right? So everything's happening for a reason, you can say, right? Like, the soft skills will really get you a long way in terms of taking your ideas across and getting those heard. Collaboration, that spirit of collaboration that really helps a lot. For me personally, it helps a lot to have an interpreter present so that the communication can flow a little bit smoother and I can connect with people. Some of the folks that I have a hard time interacting with without an interpreter, then I bring an interpreter in, and all of a sudden it's just like, wow, opens up the door and we're communicating and it's no problem and things are completely different. Now we're best friends, so things like that. There are different perspectives in terms of that soft skills and how to communicate. Being able to get the concept out or the diagramming or the designing, that's a good skill to have, I would say, so that you could show folks kind of what you're envisioning and being able to communicate that in whatever way that looks like for you. So I think there's a few different things that are involved there, but yes, soft skills can be very helpful.
Thanks, Rob. Mike, I'll throw the same question to you. We've talked about technical skills. Time to remind people of soft skills that are needed to succeed.
So the soft skills is a really interesting part, because we call them soft because we're dealing with other humans who are soft and not like hardware or kind of deep engineering technical things. But really, I mentioned this earlier, everything we do in computers and software, there's an answer to that, right? Like, it's all binary code, zeros and ones, all the way, electrical flashes on a chip, all at the end of the day. So everything we do could be reduced down to, I understand exactly what is going on. Humans follow no such pattern, right? There is no map that tells you how to interact with a human. There's no kind of standard. We try and use these words that are emitted from our mouths that go into little microphones that are transmitted over, and then they come into your ears and in your brain, which is very different than mine, and you have to interpret. The communication is the hard part. The humans are the hard part of any equation. So I think it's a matter of learning to understand that we are all different, that we all come from different backgrounds, to understand when we have common language and can shortcut explanations, and when we need to dig into specific common denominator language because we haven't built up the higher order communication yet. So I think all of that to say that the soft skills are often communication. I have coached every engineer throughout my career that you can do nothing worse than just writing more prose, writing just paragraphs of your description of what you're going to do today, writing a good commit message so that way when your code is reviewed, somebody else says, I understand exactly what you're doing here. So the just write more, and it's one of those things that as you do it more, you get better at it. Again, it's just a skill. And then empathy for the other person or other people on the other side of a communication pathway. They're not always where you are right now. They may not be responding. They may have other concerns. Like, acknowledging that opens up so much empathy to say, you know what? Mike's having a rough day. He's not going to review this in a good mindset today. He said that in Slack earlier. Maybe I'm not going to bug him today about this particularly weird thing that I'll wait until tomorrow, right? And understanding those different subtle social cues helps us all kind of give each other that moment to say, yeah, there's another person there. It's not just a faceless corporation. People are the backbone of any company. So whoever you're interacting with is a person. And that's, I think, the most important empathy soft skill that I can suggest to anyone.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Chris, do you have some interesting soft skill? I had the last fireside chat, and one of the soft skills that came up was humility. And humility in terms of your data could be wrong, it could be biased, so you have to have that humility to accept it. So, do you have some soft skills that you think maybe we don't think about, but we should have them at the back of our mind when we want to get into the cloud?
Yes. To piggyback on Mike's communication topics and to mentioning humility, one of the things that I like to do is when I'm going into a room to have a conversation with people, I like being the dumb person in the room. I never want to be the smartest guy in the room or pretend to be the smartest guy in the room. Back when I was in consulting, I would walk in and I'd say, "Hey, my name's Chris Williams. I'm going to ask a lot of dumb questions, and then we're going to get to the core of this problem." By coming at it with the humility to admit that you can be wrong, and to start the conversation with a bunch of questions, you get a lot further in your learning journey than you would if you stand on a hill from a particular topic. Like when you go down and learn a whole bunch about something, don't be that person that then my way is the right way is the only tactic that you take. Always, regardless of how expert you become at a thing, always take the position that you could be wrong, and listen to the folks in the room, especially if somebody novice comes into the room and asks a question that you're like in your head, you're like, why are they asking that question? That is absolutely ridiculous. Think about it. Think about that question, because they might teach you something new. They might think of a solution that you completely discarded because 10 years ago when you learned the technology, that was an impossibility. But since then, things have changed, and now that could be a functional thing that you can both learn together. So always take your learning path that way, that there's always something more that you could learn out there.
Thanks so much, Chris, for that. Brian, you started talking about communities, and I think that's a very interesting topic. So, do you think communities and networking are important for building a career in cloud computing? And also, how can someone approach that?
Communities aren't just important, they're necessary, they're vital. It doesn't exist without communities. I mean, that's why we're all here. That's why we're spending this time, because we believe in communities. You're never going to learn everything. You're never going to know everything. It goes back to, what Chris said about, humility. I mean, I do a lot of consulting. I go into a company and I say, I may know more about a particular technology than you do, but you absolutely know more about your domain than I do. So it's a mutual learning. And so the learning has to go back and forth, and that's a great way. I mean, user groups, meetups, just chatting with people, asking questions on LinkedIn. It's key. I mean, community is the only thing. In the end, community is the only thing really that's worthwhile. I think. How do you go about it? You go up to people and ask questions. It's hard. I mean, we can. One of the nice things one of the things I really like about the Hero program is some people get sort of intimidated by us, but we're sort of some of the nicest, most open people, because I think we've been through the journey of, man, I don't know this. And every 20 minutes a new technology comes out and we're like, oh, man, I don't know anything about that. So ask, just talk and ask.
Yeah. So Andrew, I'm going to ask this question to you. So can you, like, as networking, do you have like a story that networking has helped you build your career? And it's also linked to communities, networking communities, how important they are. You have personal story, or somebody's story that networking helped, was a key factor. Yeah.
To be honest, I'm terrible at IT networking. I just can't get it down. I'm just joking, but that's something everybody knows. Is like I'm just really bad at it. But yeah, I mean, networking is everything. Honestly, I don't think I'd get anywhere without it because, you know, I've never been able to really succeed the traditional route. And so I've always tried to best leverage user groups, online forums, the socials, anywhere where I can interact with somebody. I go there. And the idea is just if you are helpful and you act as a peer with other folks, that will turn into opportunities later. Or if you're building something, try to find like-minded people to show them what you're building, because most likely they want to build the same thing. And if they end up getting a seed round, then they might ask you to be their first tech person. You know what I mean? Or you do a hackathon with somebody, and then 10 years later, they end up working at all these prestigious companies, and they say, "Hey, I remember that hackathon we did 10 years ago. How about I pull you into this opportunity?" So, you know, I think there's opportunities all over the place. You just have to nurture those things and make time, invest that time. A lot of folks go, I don't have time to do any of this. All I have time to do is apply for jobs. But it's just part of the work that you have to do. You have to budget time to do networking and to also think of it like as sample work. People go, I don't have time to do all this extra work that I'm not getting paid for. But you have to think of it as like samples that you're putting out that might turn into leads down the road. But obviously be cautious every time, but budget something. So because people will give out nothing, or they'll put too much time in and get burnt out. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Okay, Rob. So we are gradually getting to the top of the hour, so our questions are getting towards the end. Rob, looking back, what's one thing you wish you knew when you started your cloud career? Looking back.
I think he might be responding to a question.
Okay, yeah. So Rob, looking back, what is one thing you wish you knew back then when you started your cloud career?
I wish that I had had a better understanding of route tables and security groups and networking. That's still ambiguous for me. It's still a little fuzzy. Other than that, I feel like I've had a great career so far. So no regrets, no, I don't want to say no, like, oh man, I really missed out on that one thing. No, just it's been great. There's so many things out there, too many things to, know it all. So you can be a specialist or you can be a generalist, and I think that both are fine.
Okay, thanks. Mike, do you look back and there's one thing you wish you would have done to jumpstart the whole thing?
I mean, that's such a deeply philosophical question, especially to someone who kind of grew up prior to cloud and like prior to a lot of the modern languages that we use today. I'd say when I was a kid, I didn't want to learn how to code, so I had to. So I learned how to play games and build computers. I learned hardware before I learned software. I think if I had one thing is like, oh yeah, I wish I would have learned some more software concepts back then just to accelerate. But I think the fundamentals of like learning out how hardware and like registers and all the different behaviors of hardware really helped me kind of navigate into the cloud universe, because it's the same concepts just repeated, like Rob said, the route tables, networking. It's all the same concepts, just in a different arena with a cloud spin. So understanding those fundamentals really does help, but they aren't required in order to kind of make a big splash and get a lot of things done. So I'd say the one thing that I wish I had done is kind of just had less fear and done more of those like first steps that I advise people to do today.
Thanks, Mike. Brian, is there one thing you wish you would have done differently?
I put it in the chat, but I once turned down a job from this company that had this insane idea that you could stick a piece of plastic in the wall and it'd spit out money. How silly. I didn't get involved in that. ATMs, obviously. I think having less fear is a great thing. I will say one of my best experiences was a project at school, doing the timing and scoring program for the official one for the head of the Connecticut Regatta, because I learned a day late didn't work. Changing requirements was something that happened, and unclear requirements was something that happened. So I learned those skills. It's funny, I'm seeing people list specific technologies that they wish they had learned better. Yeah, I mean, some technologies are always going to be around. I mean, SQL seems to be lasting forever and networking and so on, but so much of it just changes. And, I will say I'm not great at networking and it hasn't held me back. So it's just go without fear, leap.
Okay, thanks. So we'll go. There's the last question, which would be if you were to start your cloud journey in 2025, how you do it differently. But before we go to that, those who are on the chat, you can ask your questions. Maybe you've asked some questions earlier, some have been responded to, or you can still ask some now. And while you're dropping your questions, Andrew Brown, you're currently hosting the Gen AI Bootcamp. Can you briefly, in a couple of seconds, tell us what's going on? And yeah, what's up with that?
On February 1st, the Gen AI Bootcamp is launching. It's a free event that lasts for 6 weeks, and we're going to be doing hands-on projects. We have a prerequisite course called the Free Gen AI Essential. So if you find that challenging, you can work at that level. But it's your opportunity to work with thousands and thousands of other people at the same time. And the great thing about working with so many people is that no matter what problem you run into, somebody's going to solve it. And it's like experience like no other. We actually have multiple guest instructors here for the Gen AI Bootcamp. We got Chris, we got Rob, we got Cyril. So hopefully everybody is going to take that opportunity, because we only do this every other year, because it takes like 6 months to make these boot camps. And it's a free resource, and we'd love to see you attend.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so yeah, we will be there. We are going to support, we are going to share the knowledge, and we're going to learn together. So there's a question I'm just going to ask, and anybody can answer. I see, how did you remain consistent as technology kept moving on? So keeping up with the fast pace of technology and releases. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll jump in and say you have to keep learning, but you don't have to keep learning everything. And Amazon has this tendency to throw out 20 new features or services, and 2 of those will survive. So you don't have to be on the bleeding edge. Be on the leading edge, but don't be on the bleeding edge. But if you're going to be in this field, you're signed up for continuous education.
Okay, thanks so much. So while we are going round, okay, Andrew Brown, is that why you left me week 6? You say you gave through the hardest task in the free Gen AI bootcamp. Okay, you left me for the last. Chris, you're
Yeah.
first week 1, and I'm last week. Was that a coincidence, Andrew?
Well, I mean, like really, Cyril's like, I'll take on a challenge. I'm like, you're gonna need some time. You're gonna need some time. So but yeah, I mean, really looking forward to seeing that serious challenge, because we go from beginner to expert, and so there's no better than having Cyril end with us with like the strongest piece of content.
Okay. Thanks for the trust. Thanks for the opportunity. So I'm going to go around. So if you were starting your cloud journey in 2025, how would you do it differently? That's the last question. So Rob, you have the floor, and we are going to go around in turns. Yeah.
I would say, kind of echo what Ben said, is kind of just jump right into it, get hands-on with the tutorials. They're everywhere online. So I would say just dive right in. It's the best way to learn, and be hands-on. And I would say come up with ideas for a project using AI that can help you write the code if you need. You can just start putting things together and see what happens. Make mistakes and learn from them. Blow something up. Who knows? I don't know.
Okay. Mike, yeah. If you were to start again in 2025, how would you do it differently?
I'd say I'd echo kind of a sentiment that I posted in chat, is like what we do and kind of our jobs are serious things, right? Like we build infrastructures, we build applications that companies kind of make money on. Sometimes it's our own company, sometimes it's somebody else. Take that seriously, of like, this is what we need to do. Don't take yourself seriously. Try and leave as much ego at the door as you can. because like what we're doing is important, but like how we do it and kind of the fun that we have along the way is important. Some of the best people I've met is through these programs and different collaborations. But ultimately, I'd say just do something, right? Take that step. Don't wait for it to happen. Just figure out something that you're interested in and do it.
Thanks, Brian. Over to you now.
In the interest of time, I'll just say continuous education and be kind. Be kind to people. That's the most important thing, especially these days. And in the interest of time, that's all I got.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
I would say I would have gotten plugged into the community a lot sooner. I would have gone to user groups more frequently and helped to start running them more earlier if I was going to start over in 2025. I can't tell you the number of opportunities that have been put in front of me because of my community engagement. And I'd also switched jobs probably faster than I had by getting exposed to different technology stacks in different companies. When I went over to consulting, getting dropped into a new company every 6 months was like a fire hose of information that was very invaluable to my career. So for somebody out there that's starting off now, I would say, stick with a company for every 2 to 3 years and then move on to, level up while you're there and then move on. Don't stay in a company for 10 years. That's
Thanks,
it.
Andrew. Okay. Thanks, Chris. Andrew?
Oh yeah, I mean, if I had to restart and do it over again, I don't think I could better optimize it. I think that everyone's journeys are kind of messy, and you might think that if you choose another path, that it'll be better, but it'll probably just crop up different problems that you didn't deal with. So I don't know. I would just say that if you want to work in tech, just keep at it every day, and your path is going to be your path, and it's going to take the time it's going to take for you to get there. I don't have any optimization tips.
Thanks so much. And I'm very happy we had all this from the heroes. Like we saw last time, we have to listen to the heroes. So heroes are talking, people are listening. They are very available. Rob is always available. Andrew, Mike, Chris, Brian, you can always reach out to them. They are very nice people. We've met in reInvent and in a couple of events. So reach out to them with any other questions you have, any other concerns. Don't be afraid. They are there for the community. So I'm going to thank you all again for the time, for the knowledge, for the experience, for the masterclass, and wish you all the best. Bye.
Thanks, team.
Bye.
And I'd like to thank Amelia too for interpreting. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank Amelia for interpreting. Thanks. Bye. Yeah, yeah. Thanks. Okay.
Dun, 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 dun,
We
dun.